Welcome to another episode of the Cosmic Matrix podcast. Today again with your hosts Bernhard and Laura Matsu. And a lot is happening in the world, obviously, as the energies and the times are intensifying. And the title of this episode is Living Truthfully in a World of Lies. So that's very, very important, obviously, in this day and age. We need to step up to embody the spiritual warriors that we are. But before we dive deeper into this episode, we want to start off with a quote, a very profound quote by Alexander Solzhenitsyn.
Yes, so I just want to give a little intro to him. I'm sure some of you have heard of him before. He's definitely being quoted a lot recently because his work has become very relevant. So the following quote was basically written when he was exiled from the West. So I'm going to read you a little intro from the Alexander Solzhenitsyn Center. And this is just the intro to the quote I'm about to read. And they say, on this day, Solzhenitsyn was arrested February 12th, 1974. He released the text of Live Not By Lies. The next day, he was exiled to the West, where he received a hero's welcome. This moment marks the peak of his fame. Solzhenitsyn equated lies with ideology, the illusion that human nature and society can be reshaped to predetermined specifications. And his last word before leaving his homeland urges Soviet citizens as individuals to refrain from cooperating with the regime's lies. Even the most timid can take the least demanding step towards spiritual independence. If many march together on this path of passive resistance, the whole inhumane system will totter and collapse. So that's our intro from Edward Erickson. So I'm going to read the quote now. Yes, at first it will not be fair. Someone will have to temporarily lose his job. For the young who seek to live by truth, this will at first severely complicate life. Further tests and quizzes, too, are stuffed with lies, and so choices will have to be made. But there is no loophole left for anyone who seeks to be honest, not even for a day, not even in the safest technical occupations can he avoid even a single one of the listed choices, to be made in favor of either truth or lies, in favor of spiritual independence or spiritual servility. And as for him who lacks the courage to defend even his own soul, let him not brag of his progressive views, boast of his status as an academic or a recognized artist, a distinguished citizen or general. Let him say to himself plainly, I am cattle, I am a coward, I seek only warmth and to eat my fill. For us who have grown staid over time, even this most moderate path of resistance will not be easy to set up upon. It will not be an easy path, perhaps, but it is the easiest among those that lie before us. Not an easy choice for the body, but the only one for the soul. No, not an easy path, but then we already have among us people, dozens even, who have for years abided by all these rules, who live by the truth. And so we need not be the first to set out on this path. Ours is but to join. The more of us set out together, the thicker our ranks, the easier and shorter will this path be for us all. If we become thousands, they will not cope. They will not be able to touch us. If we grow to tens of thousands, we will not recognize our country. But if we shrink away, then let us cease complaining that someone does not let us draw breath. We do it to ourselves. Let us then cower and hunker down while our comrades, the biologists, bring closer the day when our thoughts can be read and our genes altered. So he wrote that
Quite
in
prophetic.
I know, it's like a prophecy now,
Yeah.
and basically the reason we're reading this quote is because this is really the turning point. And we need to stand up and we need to not cave under the new measures, the new vax passports, etc., because there's so much more of us than the mainstream media is letting on. And if we all stand up, this can all stop. But we all need to start standing up, speaking out. Do not comply is so important, and don't buy into the lie. Like what he's pointing out is like, for us to live by truth, it will complicate life because you see the lie has infected pretty much every single institution out there, almost every single institution. So academia, any matrix job that you're trying to be a part of is stuffed with lies. I saw this post go viral, this woman the other day, Tiffany Wilder. She quit her job teaching for many years because of wearing a mask, and she wanted to stand up, and she got fired. And that's happening all across the country, all across the world. People are getting fired for standing up for what they believe in. And that's what needs to happen. Yeah. Because if you cave now, you will not recognize the world that you live in 10 years. I actually think it's going to happen sooner. But the vax passports are the beginning of what will evolve to a socialist system based on the social credit system that they have in China. And what's even scarier is the system that will be implemented will be based on woke ideology. So, you're white, straight, a man, you get less privileges. That's the way that I see it panning out, at least. So this is a moment to stand up. I was really I was like shocked, even though I saw it coming, of BC, Canada, where I used to live for quite a few years. They're implementing vax passports now. And so half of BC, a lot of my friends are becoming second-class citizens, and we're dealing with the medical segregation now. So we're really at a turning point, and it is going to heat up. And it is really important that we understand that truth is a frequency that we must live by if we want to value ourselves and value the life that we live.
Yeah, and I also want to just mention we've got Solzhenitsyn, that he survived the gulags in Russia.
Yeah.
Right. So that's really intense, the communist crackdown, because what's happening on the global level right now, we have the worst of the worst. It's a combination of neo-Marxism, communism, globalist agenda that's cracking down. It's trying to destroy the US from within, while the far leftist woke ideologies, which are Marxist, they're, even BLM, Antifa, they're self-proclaimed Marxists. A lot of the academia is influenced by this virus. And it's literally, we talked about this before, and you can trace it back, that Marxism, communism is literally a satanic ideology based on Satanism.
And I say that, Epoch Times has a whole series about that. But all that aside, check out Satanism and Marxism, I think it's called, because he was basically writing poetry where he was talking about satanic beings taking him over. And just look at the results of it if you want to know if it's evil or not. Yeah, that's the ultimate list.
And it's now we have our combination, as David Whitehead talked about when I had him on the podcast. What we're experiencing now is the worst ideologies of the worst combined, into one hybrid, and that's the woke, basically, and including the whole. Because people have to understand. I've seen a lot of people like on the position of wake up, quote unquote, got quote unquote red pilled over the past 2 years because of the, that's what happens when you crack down on humanity and trying to repress them or control them. It triggers an awakening. So people just started to wake up. But this goes way beyond what people assume is happening now. This is way beyond COVID. This is even way beyond the vaccine passport, which is just the beginning, right? So you like Laura just said, you give them one little finger, they take the whole arm. So that's why it's so important right now to stand up and engage in full 100% non-compliance, without bargain, without any compromise whatsoever. And that may be hard for a lot of people. They may be having to make tough decisions, right? But you give in 1 inch, they give more. Like if you just believe, you just cater and just take the jab or get the passport, whatnot, this is just the beginning of the end, because it will morph more into also the social credit system, as similar in China, and this literally hell on earth. Like every aspect of your life will be controlled, even through your own body. That ties into transhumanism, AI, 5G, through the nano jab and all of that. That's a whole other story. But this is just the beginning. People who are just waking up have no idea how deep the agenda goes. A lot of us that have been researching, having seen it develop over the past, few decades, see the trajectory. And this is not about getting into doom and gloom, by the way, of the negative timeline, into fear and paranoia. But as I've discussed with John Paul Rice and David Whitehead in the last episode, you have to know thyself, know yourself, do the necessary inner work, connect to who you truly are, and know thy enemy. You have to understand what you're up against.
Yeah, and just to add on to what Alexander Solzhenitsyn really said, like his essay, he also had another quote: "The simple step of a courageous individual is to not take part in the lie. One word of truth outweighs the world." And that's the main thing, is we need to not take part in the lie. And I mean, it's going to heat up. Like, if you live in a blue state in the U.S., or never mind, oh my God, like what's going on in Australia right now.
We'll talk about that shortly. Yeah.
But I'm just speaking from the U.S. perspective, because we have the vax passports happening in L.A. I heard Chicago is implementing it, New Orleans. Like, this is really happening. And if you want to participate in society, at least if you live in a big city, they're going to ask you to get shots every 6 months, and this is going to devolve into something far, far worse. So we really need to, this is like a turning point. I'm personally, if any business mandates vaccines for their employers, or I don't even care if they have the vax passports, I'm not going to support them anymore. Yeah. I'm so over this, and I don't want to take part in the lie. And for me, I just got to say, like, we have moved our business to the information age, which we're living in right now, before this even happened. But that's what this time is going to call you to do. So you need to transfer whatever skills, talents, gifts you have. If you need to quit your job to stand by the truth, you need to do that. If I were working as a nurse right now, I would go in debt. I would borrow money, do whatever I need to do to get the F out of there if they were forcing me to take the jab, and I would create a new career. And this is a turning point many of are up against, because your health, not even that, this is an ethical, moral issue. No one should be forced to take an experimental medication that has death and serious neurological issues as a side effect to keep their job. And you don't want to be living in a place that's operating that pathologically. So there needs to be choices that are going to be made. And I see a lot of people, are going to have to make some really hard choices, but just think about it. Think about what your values are. What do you value for the future of this world? And are you willing to live by that truth? And if you aren't, what else is in the way?
The key point is also, excuse me, there's no, we mentioned this, I'm sure several times before, but it bears repeating. There's no standing on the sidelines. You have to, a lot of people, I see this everything is, we see this social engineering now plays out, because everything what's happening around humanity has been primed and programmed, not for decades, but for centuries, including extremely distorted spiritual teachings and ideas.
Yeah.
And a lot of people I see engaged on spiritual bypassing by completely oversimplifying and distorting non-duality teachings to just stay neutral, to stay on the sideline, right? Just to observe. Or, the whole misapplication of higher truths, which is typical spiritual bypassing of like, let's not get into us versus them. Let's just, let's just be compassionate, falling into blind compassion, or mistaking love for niceness, and mistaking love for all kinds of emotional attachments. Anyway, no, choices need to be made. And there's a war. And the true avatars, and I've mentioned Sri Aurobindo many times before, also talked about the necessity to destroy the anti-divine forces, right? So it's not about just contemplating or meditating your navel. The inner work is very much needed. Yes, absolutely, to connect to essence, to work through your program's shadow aspects so you don't act from your neurotic, conditioned, wounded, traumatized ego, but in alignment with truth, in alignment with essence, but actions need to be done and choices need to be made. There's a natural splitting happening within humanity.
Yeah.
So anybody who hides behind we all one, we all need to awaken together, we on this together, you don't understand what's going on.
Well, yeah, I wrote something about that the other day. I'll just kind of touch on it. I do have compassion for people who try and play this, don't buy into divide and conquer, non-duality or whatever, and they try and play the non-duality card, because spiritual bypassing is a way to disassociate and avoid suffering, just flat out. And I know this because I'm someone who used to meditate 2 hours a day to get out of body so I could just manage my life and not deal with my trauma. So I know this more than anyone. Number two is that most people who claim I'm not going to, a non-duality, don't be attached, don't buy into either, they don't truly live at this level of consciousness. No. They don't. They're just latching on to a mental theory of spirituality, but they are just suppressing what they really feel. So that's another point, right?
Yeah, that's very important to note. Like on that note, this whole non-duality thing, which I also bought into at some point, and I can, looking back, I can see myself and see many people. They are, like you just said, they're intellectualizing it.
Yeah, and it's not a true embodied.
It's not a true embodied. You know, that to claim to live in complete non-duality is like to claim you're fully enlightened.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is like we need. Exactly. Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, there's many of us out here and we just need many more to join the ranks that are already here. Yes. You already have a group of people who are standing up and speaking up. All you do is have to join them. You don't even have to be the first person who gets burned at the stake for saying it, you know? And this is exactly the moment when you're supposed to use all your so-called spiritual strength to stand true to the things you value. This is what you're doing it for. You know, spirituality is not meant to be this passive experience where you just meditate on your navel and escape from the world. I guarantee you, majority of people who are playing this, like, I'm not going to buy in to make a choice, they're not even doing their spiritual inner work in any sincere way, you know, because I have meditated I came out of a 2-week meditation retreat in January 2020, and all of this shit happened. And I was like, and I actually did reach a state of non-dual awareness for like a day after I came out of meditation. And then I got sucked back into this. And the more I meditate, the more I'm like, no, this is a turning point. We need to stand up. If we don't, we're going to, you know, the future generations really depend on us standing up right now, basically.
I want to just add.
And this is, and it's exciting in a way, because now we, you know, I feel a lot of people, their lives got very comfortable and now we're uncomfortable, and now we need to actually use our life force to do something important. So now we have a bigger purpose beyond our just personal, you know, comforts.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, then there's definitely, yes, there's a divide and conquer agenda of the Matrix happening as well. I mean, that's the common sense. It's obvious, right? They're definitely trying to pit humans against humans based on woke ideologies, gender identity, you know, politics, racism, artificial manufactured racist, you know, critical race theory and all of that. So there's definitely the artificial divide and conquer agenda, even pitting non-vax against vaxxed and all of that. So this is there, but there is also a natural splitting happening. There's a natural division happening. We've talked about this before. I've written about this before. Even polarization is necessary to ignite the fire within for alchemical transformation, right? So you have to really be careful. Like, I just realized how a lot of these spiritual teachings, especially in New Age pop spiritual ideas, have become so distorted, not to polarize, you know, just to turn the other cheek, and, you know, non-violence has been also extremely distorted. Doesn't mean to condone violence, but non-violence can easily be used, fall into pacifism and into non-action and all of that. And there needs to be resistance, you know, and counteract the anti-divine forces, which means getting into the healthy aggression principle of the warrior archetype. And the aggression, again, is not to be mistaken with violence, but action, decisiveness, and standing up against the predator, because you cannot beat the predator with niceness, like, as Carlos Castaneda said. Right?
Don't try and use non-violent communication on someone who believes that you don't have the right to decide what goes into your body. They don't give a shit.
No, you cannot convince. So that's why I mentioned before, it's so important to know their enemy. And you're dealing with people, like, people project qualities into these, into the, you know, Bill Gates, Fauci. They're just the puppets on the front, on the surface anyway. Yeah. But we're dealing with forces, or quote unquote human beings, that have no conscience whatsoever. They do not care about you. They see you as useless cattle.
Well, yeah, that's that part as well. So there's leaders who are lacking conscience. That's why they execute these plans. But then also, what I've noticed, and this is not my own idea, Sirit Shalwa, a therapist, a non-woke therapist on Twitter, who, by the way, is also pro-vax. I don't agree with everything she says, but she doesn't believe in passports. Anyway, she made a really good point about the left, and especially woke ideology, is that as a group entity, it operates like a psychopath, basically. So there's lots of people who believe themselves to be good, virtuous people who have clung to this ideology, but the moment that they cling on to this group entity, they operate like a psychopath. So we have to also be aware that there is a group entity right now that is making regular, normal people who are just not that aware, have just bought into the narrative. They operate like psychopaths because only a psychopath believes that you don't have the right to decide what medication goes into your body. That's
and I mean, you can literally
inhumane.
take this literally group entity from a cult perspective, a Wetiko having taken over
exactly
the mob.
Yes, the
literally
mob.
like it's like tangled like octopus entity, manipulating these people.
The mob
right?
operates like a psychopath. So there's a lot of quote unquote people who think that they're very good people who are being convinced to do very dark things that on their own they would not be capable of, because now that there's this group entity basically of leftist medical totalitarianism that they've latched onto, and now they have become. It's like that quote by, I think in Nietzsche, it's like stare into the abyss and the abyss stares back at you.
Yeah, but have you just written about this today on Facebook or sometime about like all these leftists like screaming Nazi at Trump and Trump supporters?
I can read that actually.
Read that real quick, yeah.
Yeah, so 1 year ago, people called us conspiracy theorists for saying that the vax passport was inevitable. Now here we are with several places in Europe, US, and Canada making showing your papers necessary in order to buy food, eat in a restaurant, or participate in other forms of the matrix. We need to stop vax passports now and resist, because it will only get worse from here and evolve into a social credit system similar to that of China. Do not support businesses who implement a mandatory vax or vax passport. Do not let anyone pressure you into taking this experimental medical treatment if you don't want it. Speak up for yourself. It's shocking to witness people who call themselves liberals cheering on this kind of medical segregation and saying the unvaccinated should be denied the ability to work, travel, or get medical care. Many of these are the same people who called Trump a Nazi for the past 4 years, and now they're playing the role of what the actual brown shirts did themselves. The totalitarian nature that was projected onto Trump over the past years was purely a shadow projection of the left, and now they act it out so obviously and with glee. And I'll just go on to my advice because this is important. So if you want my personal advice to deal with incoming vax passports, get out of cities, move to rural areas, look at the local political climate where you're moving to as well. Go and visit and check it out. Are people wearing masks? Are they living freely? And because there is truly opposite timelines happening in the US right now. I'm sure it's happening in other places as well. And it's important to choose wisely and act sooner rather than later. Honestly, in many ways, you got to like act yesterday. So many of us have already moved months ago. We moved out of California. Like I was already not feeling California for a little while. But really get into wartime mode, because there's going to be places hit harder by medical totalitarianism than others. Expect to buckle down. Traveling has been restriction. And just remember the Great Reset motto is you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. So do the opposite. Create a beautiful home. Simplify your life. Enjoy it. Create beauty. Live in an honest and simple way, because the Matrix cannot control those who liberate themselves from being dependent on it. And if your work demands a jab, create your own work. This is really important. We live in a new age. We are in a new age. It's called the information age. And it's a great time to be an entrepreneur if you can take advantage of the opportunity presenting itself. Decentralize, create communities, new systems. And there's more of this. There's more of us in the mainstream media is making you think. Just, the revolution is not going to be televised. It's happening now. Like, make the jump. I know so many people are just... You have skills, you have talents, you have gifts. Be creative, be innovative. This is an opportunity right now. Do not buy into this old world belief that you have to get your paycheck from someone else.
Yeah.
If you're being pressured by your job to get the jab, trust me, you can create something else. I know you can. I've coached so many people into doing this. I've coached myself. I've coached even Bernhard to quit his paycheck job. I know you can do it. So
no, beautiful. I just wanted to add to this. It's also a couple of things. Also understanding that this is not about fear-mongering, paranoia, negativity, but really understanding and realizing that the agenda goes way beyond what is happening, what we see happening now, and has only just begun. Like I mentioned before, people who just have quote unquote, red pilled over the past 2 years, don't understand what's really, just start to wake up to the surface of the agenda. And what we see now is still the surface. There's way more. We have literally just begun. And it's also astrologically represented, with all kinds of transit that are about to occur, including the Pluto return of the US, which is going to affect the whole world. And it's a transformation, right? So it's about preparing on all levels. We've talked about this. That's hence even the fourfold approach of self-work on all levels, physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual, doing the inner work, but externally preparing as well, which is about location. And the thing is, it will challenge your comfort zone, right?
On all levels.
On all levels. Hence, the inner work is key to get over your inertia. And as said before, but it is a great opportunity, like Laura said, and it's a silver lining, right? It's the best fertile ground for the great work. It will also a test for you if you walk the talk, of just truly awakening and truly becoming a sovereign, self-responsible individual. But there's an opportunity within all of that. I'm not saying it's easy, but decentralization is the name of the game, right? It's a paradox which was happening because all the crackdown, all the totalitarian tyranny is igniting, is inspiring a deeper awakening. But it also requires using your will, your determination to counteract the anti-divine forces and use your creative power.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and the will is really key, and I think it's really often bypassed by a lot of people doing spiritual or inner work. Is like you have to engage the will. Like even when we do our group coaching programs, like there's people who finish the program and there's people who barely start it, because one person engaged the will and the other person didn't. So don't think that spirituality is a passive experience. It's actually an active experience, and it's an active experience of self-actualization, of individuation as well, becoming the person who you truly are. We have so much, like even myself this past year, I thought I was like pretty much good at being myself, like my weird, crazy self. And then 2020 hit and I had to go through another layer of deconditioning of myself from the ideologies I'd been programming, deconditioning myself from people-pleasing behaviors, from all sorts of things all sorts of ways that I was living where I was not being true to myself because I was worried what other people would think of me. I was worried about, just the backlash or whatever. All of that has gone out the window. Another thing too is like, on a personal level is like, we have our own personal unconscious that will be coming up from the collective unconscious for us to deal with, meaning our own personal shadows. And that's one thing I see as well with a lot of people is like, really be careful. Do not become the evil that you see in the world. This is so, so, so critical. And I know because I think I've told this story before, but I'll just tell it in short, but I did have my grandmother and my grandfather, they both were put into internment camps in World War II, and my grandfather, he got extremely bitter and angry and hated the government. And he actually ended up dying in his 40s shortly after they got released. My grandmother, she stayed connected to essence. She had a strong spiritual foundation. And not only did she thrive and had I have tons of cousins and she had tons of grandkids, but because she stayed connected to essence, because she stayed connected to that spiritual part of her nature. So that's the key point, is if you want to survive these kinds of regimes, do not let them steal your soul and do not become the evil that you see in the world. And that's why the spiritual self-work is so critical, because, you and I, in our relationship, in the container that is our relationship, we have our own personal shadows come up. It gets stressful. It's our own traumas have gotten ignited. All of this stuff is very real to us. We're not just preaching to you as if we're this all-knowing beings. No. We speak to you from these personal experience. I just went
from
through
the battlefield,
from being in the trenches with you. And I mean in the trenches of having to make the personal collective shadows that are rising up conscious. And I've had to go through so much of my own shit. For me, mostly it comes up in the container of our relationship. I have Pluto hitting my sun, my moon, my Mercury, and my Venus while this Pluto return is happening. I have Pluto conjunct my sun. So I know how to work with Pluto. And if I were to give people one piece of advice is do not ignore the little inklings from your soul, from your subconscious when they start to arise and become conscious. That little thing that tells you, this friendship is kind of feeling weird. I have a weird feeling about this. Or, maybe I have a problem. Maybe I have a problem with the way that I'm approaching my relationships. Meaning what I'm trying to say is be willing to learn and be willing to listen to the call of your soul, because we each have our own individual personal work that's going to be arising within this. And that's the main thing, is like, become that change, live the life that you want to see possible in the world. Don't be fighting the shadows on the wall. Don't give your power away. Yes, share information, get the word out there, speak for what's important and valuable to you, but do not become the demon that you're fighting, basically. Anyway, so I'm speaking from my own experience, and we just spent a week off to reset in mind, body, and spirit, got away. We've been doing hosting group programs throughout this. So we've been fully engaged in helping people during these times. And, it does get stressful. It does get crazy. And I'm just saying this because that was what I was trying to reset from. I noticed in myself and Bernhard, we just get very negative with each other because it is stressful. Be realistic, be forgiving with yourself, but also, just notice, don't look at who you're becoming and really become the spiritual warriors that the world needs right now. Don't get lost fighting the shadows on the wall.
Yeah, and that now, before we want to dive deeper into the announcement of the Pfizer, FDA and all of that, and the vaccine and whatnot. Probably talk more about in the second hour, because you never know, we get canceled for the first hour. So more in the membership, but at this point,
Yeah.
But, it's important, it's the balance, right? So there's also something I wanted to share with you guys, something I wrote after we just got back, as Laura mentioned, from a 5-6 day hideout, like completely no internet, no social media, completely gone. We even did some medicine, which we can maybe share about in the second hour.
Yeah, we can share about in the second hour for sure.
But really, so also self-care, right? It's just getting away from the information overload, and internet detox is very important in this day and age as well, right?
Yeah.
So I just want to share with you guys, during this time of transition, when everything is inverted and the forces of darkness attempt to enslave humanity in their desperate attempt to break your spirit to become their obedient authoritarian soulless slaves, it is important to stay informed about the truth in this World War III psychological information warfare. Speak out, resist, and engage in non-compliance and civil disobedience without compromise or bargain, grounded in warrior mode, and stand up for something bigger than yourself or your personal desires. That's also very important. This goes way beyond what you personally want. This is standing up for something big, and that's also one of the attributes of the warrior archetype, to defend a higher ideal. But at the same time, do not forget to take care of yourself and treat yourself to a personal great reset, pun intended, and decompress in nature periodically, away from social media, the internet, and your tech gadgets. Get back into your body, out of your mind, and realize the joy of your soul and the beauty around you. That's very important, especially when we realize that too. Objective beauty, that is, right? That can only be seen with the eyes of the soul as you experience the divine force all around you and within you.
Yes.
Recharge and prepare for the times ahead as a loyal servant for the divine, for we have seen nothing yet, and you are needed. The only thing that will carry you through these times is your connection to essence, your true self, and the divine. Your immortal true self knows the truth, knows what to do, where to be, and most importantly, what not to do that is not aligned with truth and integrity. Not just for yourself, but for all of humanity in alignment with divine law. We learn a lot from our little dog Leo, right? He's really teaches us a lot about the joy of being. And there's no coincidence that dog spelled backwards is God sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. So he teaches us a lot about the joy of being, right? Which is essential for an embodied warrior. Joy is the true state of your soul, actually, right? Because true objective love destroys all evil. This is not meek, emotional, human, conditional love or joy most people mistake for true love. It's not a feeling and doesn't depend on anything external, right? This joy is just there. It's not the fulfillment of the desires, wishes, or dreams. It's also not niceness, neutrality, passivity, or pacifism, which love is most often mistaken as. It's a state of pure being that can't be threatened, intimidated, imprisoned, or even killed, for it is internal. Hence, saying no to the thing that shall not be named, which is the vaccine, is the easiest thing to do for anyone connected to essence. As you personally become a mere pure expression of essence, which is hidden behind layers of programs, social, cultural conditioning, desires, wounds, traumas, all of which need to be healed and unraveled via the necessary inner work, then conscience becomes your guide, not your ego personality with its conditioned desires, and you will naturally stand up for truth, with the sword of truth if necessary, with all the fierceness needed, without complaining or whining, but taking full responsibility for the tasks ahead, regardless of all opposition, for you can't be threatened or intimidated anymore because you know yourself. And that is true freedom, but it requires a level of self-responsibility many people are not ready for, right? Hence, they still want mommy government along with the Church of Scientism to tell them what to do and take care of them, or they're waiting for some savior outside themselves.
Yeah.
Don't kid yourself. This is a war over your soul, the end game, as prophesied by many esoteric traditions. But within all, as we talked about before, there is a big opportunity and a magnificent plan that no human-minded being can alter. When you're in touch with your soul, not the fake desire soul, but your true self, you know that nothing can stop what is coming, and it's marvelous, but it's a bumpy road ahead. Remember, the divine will succeed at last, but your participation is needed as the transducer for divine will. This is the paradox that the human mind cannot reconcile. So be ready and prepare yourself accordingly on all levels. We say this over and over again. Physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. Your voice and your being matter. Yeah. Every conscious act grounded in truth has unforeseen positive ripple and butterfly effects across all dimensions. So stand up for truth. Make the right decisions. Stop caring what other people think of you. Be the warrior. Opposition is inevitable. You have to understand that. This awakening path will arise up all kinds of opposing forces, not just externally, but internally within yourself. That is the nature of the beast, right?
And I have to say, as well, in line with the title, is that a lot of people are scared to face the lies that they tell themselves. So you can't live truthfully unless you're willing to examine the lies that you tell yourself. And that's an ongoing, continuous process. There's many things I thought 2 years ago. There's many things I've even said to Bernhard, which I realized were a lie, even the day after, So we have to be willing to establish that witness and understand when we're not living in integrity ourselves. For me, I just went to the dog park, actually, when we came back from our trip. And I just really realized how painful it is for me to be inauthentic around people at this point. And now it's like either I avoid people who I have to be inauthentic around, or I'm authentic with them and shit hits the fan. So for me, people at the dog park, I just choose the first option. However, in my life, in my personal life with my friends, my family, I have no room to be inauthentic with them anymore. I don't have room in my soul for it. It's not worth it for me. It's not worth it for them. Actually, as an act of compassion for the lives that they live, I would rather live authentically and shake things up with people. So that's the number one thing. If you want to live truthfully in a world full of lies, be willing to see all the ways that you lie to yourself on a daily basis, because it does happen daily. And I'm not saying to put the hammer down on yourself and just use this as a way to self-shame yourself, but this is the path. This is truly the path, is being able to catch yourself on your own bullshit, basically, on a daily basis. And we know this because this is what happens in our relationship on a daily basis. It's like I have to continuously notice when I'm not being truthful, when I'm projecting on Bernhard, when I'm not living in alignment with who I truly am. It's not an easy path, but it's really the only path if you want to live truthfully. And when you live truthfully, something comes back to you. You really start retrieving your life force from all the places where you gave your power away. And so it is worth it, but it is ongoing work. And for some people who have been living lies for decades now, deciding to live truthfully you may have to literally radically change your whole life. So that's just what's on the table. But I think that this is really the point. And truth is really a frequency. That's why when people say things and they're not being truthful, you can tell a lot of the time, because truth is a frequency.
If you're more in contact, because people can easily get fooled by appearances and
for sure.
Charisma,
but the basic essence is that I posted about this the other day on Facebook, and I've used this term in the past, even probably in the past year, this idea, your truth. That's not real. There's no such thing as your truth. There is the truth, and then there's perspectives,
perceptions.
There's perceptions, opinions, but there's only one truth, really, and all spiritual teachings lead back to that same place.
Yeah, this is a red flag when I hear somebody talk, well, this is my truth. I'm just living my truth. That's already like, ugh, you know what I mean?
Yeah, most of the time it's
you're lying,
actually
justifying yourself.
Or maybe it is the truth, but it's their perception of it. But a lot of people who say, especially, this is, by the way, the term your truth came from this whole leftist ideology where they said, your lived experience is the most important thing. Yes. You're denying people's lived experience. That is an offshoot of that. Right. But just understanding that, like, they're, what, and this is one thing we actually also do in the course, but really important to understand is that, a lot of the things that we experience are just our own perspectives, and that's okay. We're allowed to have opinions. We're allowed to have perspectives, but be open to analyzing and questioning them on a day-to-day basis.
But I want to add on that, it's very, very hard to detect your own lies. You're telling by the nature of it, because you're not lying, you're rationalizing, you're not lying to yourself.
That's true.
You need to already have a high level of self-awareness, being an objective observer, understanding the rudiments of the basics of self-work, of shadow work, of projection, of triggers, of your conditioning, of being able to observe what comes from your false conditioned program self, where's essence coming through. It already creates a higher level of being to be able to do it.
That's true.
That's why also we have said it over and over again, there's only so much self work you can do by yourself, because you will lie and delude yourself and go in circles and justify and all of that. Hence you need others to do the work with together.
For sure.
Now we have the benefit, we point ourselves out, each other our blind spots. I have my blind spots all the time. Sometimes, I can be aware of it, but that's why it's important to do the work. Like I said it before many times. This time is not just important to be around like-minded people, but people who are engaged in the same work.
Yes.
And as Gurdjieff said, be alarm clocks to each other, right? Where you can call each other out, so call in a compassionate way, but make each other aware.
Yes.
When we are like, okay, I'm lying to myself, I'm not seeing myself, because none of us can see ourselves objectively.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what, that's the only way to do this work on your own. And many people could lie to themselves about this, is if you have a strong enough conscience that calls you out. So like if I basically go through experience where I'm in a bad mood and I project all my stuff on you, then what happens is, like, a couple hours later, sometimes even immediately after, my conscience, this voice comes up in me and it's like, you were wrong about that. And it sucks. That's when I learned humility. And that's when I really realized, like, oh shit, like I just projected all my stuff on him, and I have to deal with this, and I have to face whatever shadows were coming out in that moment, But for me, like, I love doing this kind of work. I truly love it. I love understanding more of what I've hidden in the caverns of my own psyche, so I can become a more whole person, because honestly, it feels really good to be a whole person, not be hiding from yourself. Yeah. So, we have to, and that's why we create these group containers. If you can't, you don't have to work with us, but work with coaches, therapists. To me, this is awesome. If I can find people who can call me out and help me gain a greater self-awareness of myself, like, this just helps me so much.
If it's asked for, there's nothing worse than unsolicited feedback.
Yeah. And I was even thinking today, I was like, how many people ask for advice on the internet from people who are just as lost as they are?
That's the worst. When I see that on Facebook, social media, people asking for personal advice about this and that.
Yeah.
Just health advice is like, oh my God.
Yeah,
I mean, I understand there can be some, I don't want to throw the baby with the bathwater, but they can do more damage than any good in the end of the day.
Yeah, but one of the best investments you can make with yourself is finding someone, like, I work with an astrologer / therapist, but be in alignment with people who have the same mission in life. For me, my mission is to really wake up and remember who I am, and maybe I'll get enlightened in this lifetime. I don't know.
And then also, well, I want to mention something as well, by the way, on that note. We have done now 5 courses, or we're just starting our 5th one, right? Embodied Soul Awakening. We're going to take people on the 11-week journey. It's intense work.
Yes.
We're going to move this program also into standalone. So
a self-paced program.
So keep watch out for that. Sign up to our mailing list on veilofreality.com for more info on that. But people always complain, well, I don't have the money, the resources to work with somebody. I mean, And then people ask, how can I start self-work? Where do I start? All these questions. Finding good is great to ask questions, but also put effort into to find it for yourself. That's how I started out. In the 90s,
totally.
there was no internet. I went to the library, to the books, I bought books, shadow work, boom.
Yeah.
Bought a book for $10. I self-studied. I worked on myself first. I have folders full of notes from studying Jungian psychology myself in the 90s, and then I got, finally then the internet boomed up. So I got there's a whole library for free information on the internet. You got to put the effort in. It's all there.
For $10 a month, you can access what's called Kindle Unlimited, where they have a whole library of lots of amazing books. Most books on Kindle are literally $10. And I know that everyone can afford that. And I actually, at some point in my journey, I was going into debt when I was visiting Peru and doing medicine ceremonies. And then I started doing shadow work and starting into Jung's work when I was there. And for $10, I bought a book on shadow work and I did all of the exercises and I applied it to my life. It takes continuously reapplying these concepts, deepening your understanding them. And it helped me stop avoiding parts of myself that I was avoiding. So we have to, and again, that's why it's it brings it back to this question. Do you really want to awaken, or do you just want some version of awakening in your head? Because the path is amazing, honestly. The way that I feel now versus how I felt 2012 when I had my big dark night of the soul / crisis, I would never have imagined that I would be able to be this kind of person, to have this kind of life, to open myself to others in this kind of way. I would have never imagined that I was going to be that kind of person. I was so miserable and I was so negative, but I worked really effing hard and I was very sincere in my path. And it got to the point where I was even so sincere, I could start lifting other people up. And so that's what we need. We need not only people who are sincere in doing their other work, but we need other people to help lift other people up. Like Bernhard and I, we work actually, Bernhard loves working, but we work more.
Work is play. It's not really work.
We work more than I want to work. I read 40-hour work week by Tim, or 4-hour work week by Tim Ferriss a few years ago. I was like, oh my God, I want a 4-hour work week, but I'm not working a 4-hour work week as I intended when I first started doing this, because the demand is there, and we need to really build community. If there's one thing that's going to help us, it's find the others, find the others who are like-minded. We're doing that in our own little community here as well. We're reaching out, we're branching out. We're very introverted people, but we're branching out because this is really wartime, and you got to start thinking like a war strategist. What would happen if, honestly, if they start sending people to gulags, they're going to be sending people like us first. So I don't care at this point. They can send me to gulag. I'm going to pretend to be a social justice warrior. I have my whole plan laid out in my head. and I'm going to go through their brainwashing routine, and I'm going to come out pretending I'm this most, I could pretend to be a social justice warrior better than actual social justice warriors out there. So I'm not worried. What I'm saying is build community and find the others, because the more of us stand up and say no, the more they won't be able to do that.
That's the key. And going back to the title of this podcast, living truthfully in the world of lies, is not only speaking truth, standing up against the totalitarian, tyrannical crackdown that's happening, and engaging in civil disobedience, non-compliance, and all of that, but also the truth within, the truth of your being. And that's the hardest work. Like we talked about this before, from an esoteric perspective, it's much harder to face the lies you tell yourself as opposed to facing the lies out in the world, right? Because they will get out of your comfort zone, because then there's nowhere to blame. We talked about this before. True freedom is people talk about freedom in the sense of the Constitution and America, and yes, freedom of speech, all fine and good. We need to fight for that. But true internal freedom is terrifying, and not everybody can handle it.
Yes.
Because true freedom requires no complaining, no whining, no blaming, no victimizing, no nothing. Taking full self-responsibility for everything you feel, for everything that's going on in your life, and really digging down deep, right? Getting no escape, no addictions, no distractions, none of that.
I go through a lot of internal acrobatics to blame you for my problems.
That's true.
And I have, and I go really far to try and make Bernhard responsible for all of my personal problems. And I will invent the most elaborate, convincing stories on why you're responsible for my my unhappiness when I'm not feeling good.
Right.
And I have to reclaim that. And that is like the hardest pill to swallow, right? Because this is like, and then we do this all the time in our relationships and our lives too, is we want to look for someone else to blame.
Somebody needs to be blamed.
And honestly, like that's probably the number one attitude that needs to be changed if you want to engage in self-work sincerely. And this does not mean to stay in abusive relationships or whatever.
No.
Don't use, like, I'm not saying to misuse this concept. I'm just saying that you are responsible for the person that you are and the life that you live. You were given this life as a gift. The Tibetan Buddhists would say that being a human is one of the most blessed experiences you could have. And how are you using that opportunity? Like, if you really get excited, if you really get inspired and excited about it, you realize you have an amazing potential in front of you. But many of us have been trained with this kind of transhumanism AI agenda to give our power away. So I really feel, especially, thinking of it in evolutionary astrology terms, we're entering this Aquarian age. You already see it with this information age. And so Aquarius, I would say the general theme is about individuation, being an individual, being who you are. There's many themes, but I would say that that's the fundamental one. And then the polar opposite sign of that, which is also part of the evolutionary axis of the times we're in, age of Aquarius, is Leo, which is creative self-actualization. So you have to think about, you are a very unique person. You have gifts to offer that no one else can do. And it's about deconditioning yourself so you can tap into that true essential nature. And so you're going to say something, honey?
No, what just came to me with what's very important, because more and more people are waking up, engaging in their self-work, but a lot of it, I see almost a resurgence of new age stuff coming up, which I thought we over and done with in 2012.
No.
It's coming out again, pop spiritual, even pop psychology, a lot of spiritual bypassing. And even with this knowledge, like fringe knowledge, occult knowledge, a lot of stuff I've been writing about for 2 decades, hyperdimensional matrix, entity interferences, all of that, And I see more and more people getting into these kind of topics before they have done any psychological work, any foundational work, and get trapped in that and very confused, or again, blame entities and this and that. And it's increasing more and more. Or a big red flag where you and I experience, and people like, they're looking for more advanced knowledge. That's already a big red flag. I remember Eve Lorgan and you and I, we talked about this. When people are looking for advanced knowledge. I'm still doing it's all the holistic self-work on all levels happens simultaneously all the time. I'm still working on basic childhood stuff, continuously. It's not that I'm stuck there. It's just more refined,
yes.
while bringing in the divine force as well. I'm still doing basic shadow work. So anybody who claims, I've done this already 20 years, I'm done with it, do you have more advanced knowledge? It's a red flag for me, because number one, it shows me they're not really applying the work. They may not be even understanding the work and whatnot, because it becomes more refined continuously.
Yeah.
And I'm actually in the process of writing a longer article on that. It's going to be titled Occulted Knowledge, Spiritual Bypassing, and the Necessity of Foundational Holistic Self-Work, that really addresses this problem I see in more and more. So many people spiritual bypass with the new age or fringe knowledge, entities, hyperdimensional matrix, all of this, archons, and they have not worked one bit on their own shadow, on their basic childhood trauma, which we all have to varying degrees. And I'm not saying that we should just do psychological work, right? We've talked about this before. You can get stuck in the mud as well. You need to bring it all in, right? There's spiritual work as well, the esoteric, all together. But, I see just a lot of more spiritual bypassing happening in this day and age.
Yeah. And the reason that is happening is because these people cannot handle the heat, because things are heating up. And so they're moving into escapism. I knew that was going to happen. I was actually wondering where all the spiritual bypassers went last year. I was like, because of my default, if you were to ask me like 2 years ago, I would have tried to spiritual bypass what was going on. I would have probably quit my social media, gone to a cabin, just meditated, just removed myself from the world. But that's not the phase of life that I'm in anymore. Even with my astrology, it's very externally focused right now. And I'm a very introverted person. But the main thing is like, you got to become, you literally have to become a master of working with the collective unconscious and your own personal shadow during these times, because the shadows are heating up. Like, I can't tell, my Twitter is actually open for comments. It's the only public kind of profile that I have left. And the amount of awful projections I get on there on a daily basis really does challenge me, and in a good way, because I need to take on these projections, and anytime a projection lands in me, it means there's part of me that believes it. It doesn't mean that it's true, but there's means that part of that me believes it. So I have to do my own personal work on it. So it gives you so much material. The more people are projecting in the world, the more material you're going to have to work with your shadow. And maybe some people will project and it won't land on you. Great, you've done your work there. But sometimes when it does and it triggers you and it upsets you, that's material for you to work with. And that's a completely different mindset. I think until you're truly sincere on the path, you try and create your life in such a way that you avoid any of these awful things happening. And then when you get truly sincere on living truthfully and not living by lies, is you see these experiences and you're like, wow, how did I do? You literally can give yourself a report card based on people projecting on you and see how you did with your own personal shadow.
From a great work perspective, when I trigger somebody in session or there's triggers happening, I'm excited. Okay, here's a trigger. Let's go. There's some material to work with.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
If the person can own it and not engage in transference, and I all of a sudden become, an unconscious daddy or something like that.
Yes.
So there's always material to work through, and the truth remains. What even Carl Jung said, I'm paraphrasing his quote about he said something, the person that irritates us the most is our greatest teacher or something like that.
Yes, exactly.
That's really what it comes down to. So
totally.
If we irritate you, Lauren, and something triggers you, great. There's some material for you to work with. What does it remind you of? Can you examine it within yourself without blaming anyone? Blaming another person for the way you're irritated.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going through that process collectively now because I was raised by liberal woke leftists, and now the whole world has become my childhood, basically. And so it gives, and it's amazing. It was honestly really intense at first, but it gives me lots of material to work with. So the point we're trying to make is you have your own personal part of the unconscious that's arising within you to work with. We have this basically surgence of energy arising from the collective unconscious that's creating chaos in the world, because this is a polarization we need for the third entity to emerge in this
that's going
transformative.
to be challenging for a lot of people to hear. The polarization is needed.
Yes, polarization is necessary for transformation.
Exactly.
It's just a fact. It's you can't stay neutral. You got to engage in the process, know. But the main thing is the polarization is necessary, because out of the polarization, a third thing is going to emerge, and we have not seen that. And we have not seen that yet. And that's what Carl Jung says. You kind of have to hold the tension between the opposites. It doesn't mean that you don't take a position. It doesn't mean you don't stand up to the things you value. But through holding the tension of the polarization of the world, a third thing can emerge.
And holding the tension with the opposites doesn't mean, again, falling into this intellectual idea of non-duality either.
Yeah, and I would just generally, it's really important, I think. This is why we talk about embodiment and authenticity so much. It's if you haven't actually embodied what the spiritual teaching you're thinking about or you're working towards it, don't use it as a bypass. I do this sometimes too. I speak of spiritual theories that I haven't really fully landed in me yet, but take time to ruminate on it, because the thing is if you really study non-dual teachings, and I actually know a non-dual teacher who's more outspoken against the vax than most people I know. So that's not true that you can be a non-dual teacher and not take a position, but the point is you need to actually return to duality. The point of non-dual consciousness is so that you remain a little bit objective and a little bit detached and non-attached to it.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean that you don't engage in the world, but it means that you are able to be objective. So that's the overarching.
Which is easy. Also, it's a journey. And again, we're all in the process, like we talked, Laura and I get triggered. I project sometimes, you know what I mean? Even so, it happens all the time.
Yes.
I'm not trying not to project. Projection is a function of the psyche. It's just knowing when you do it and how you do it, and then learning from it. Very simple, right?
Yes.
It's not gonna be over tomorrow. We are a transitional being, as Sri Aurobindo said. We have so far long more to go to become the Gnostic divine beings we're destined to be. I'm talking about thousands and even hundreds of thousands of years. We're still in a half animal state. So we have a long way to go. But again, whatever lesson you don't learn now, whatever you avoid now, at some point you have to face it, in this lifetime and next life. So there's no avoidance, right? You can avoid, repress it now, stay in inauthenticity, stay afraid, not speak out, not make a position, but eventually it will come back around based on the law of cause and effect, based on the law of karma, which also been abused, but it's a divine law. You cannot just avoid, so to speak.
But can I say something about that? Maybe we talk about it in the second hour. So you want to say something?
No, I just want to finish up with saying, like, so basically, but now, again, it is a great opportunity. This is the fertile ground, like Gurdjieff and many others said, like in difficult situations or like when the world is in upheaval, that's the best time for the great work because it forces you to focus on what truly matters. Yes. And it brings up all this stuff. And as like Laura mentioned, don't forget that what we see in the world is also unconsciously, the collective unconscious is some level also a reflection of your inner turmoil as well. It's totally interconnected, right? Yeah. So the chaos we see out there is your own suppressed chaos within you. The division you see out there is your own division within you and vice versa.
Yes.
And the biggest spiritual bypass you can do is by just intellectualizing the process. So that's one of the say that as well when you do work on yourself, reading books, fine and good, but catch yourself because your intellect can fool you. And I've known this because I fool myself and I still sometimes do light that the intellect can tell you that you have understood something, it resonated something, you can intellectually understand your issues, have the story, and fool yourself that you have healed, but it's just an intellectual understanding and not embodied, lived knowledge yet.
The body knows the truth, though.
Exactly.
That's the thing, and that's why the somatic work is really important, and we've talked about this a lot before, but basically, the point of somatic work is so that you can be in your body and be fully there in your human experience. Doesn't mean you're trying to pretend to be like an enlightened being, but you're totally alive and here and present now. But anyway, there's more I wanted to say, but we're going to have to save it for the second hour because what you said, don't avoid things. That also relates to this Pluto process we're going through right now. So we can talk more about that.
So we're going to talk second hour. What about the Pluto process?
Yeah, I want to talk about working with Pluto a little bit more in depth. We can share actually a little bit about this experimental medical treatment and this FDA approval, which is actually not true.
I want to talk about more that the vaccine itself, really definitely in the second hour, and also the dangers of it. This is not like people say, "I'm just going to get the jab so I can work." No, well, you might work, but then what's going to happen with your body and yourself and even your life in 3 to 5 years? You might not be there anymore. I'm not saying this to instill fear, but there's very serious concerns. And I want to also share some real science by doctors who've been speaking out against the vaccine, but have been suppressed and all that. So all that in the second hour. And again, it's only available for members. If you're not a member yet, you can go to my website, veilofreality.com, and sign up for the membership. Gives you access to the second hour of all podcasts, including the membership forum on my website. And that's that. I want to close off this first hour with something I wrote a while back as well, because this is really what's happening right now, the next phase, so to speak. We are about to enter the next phase of the most intense, multiple-dimensional war of galactic proportions. This war is manifested in the physical world, but it is also through you. There is no hiding from it. You could try to escape to some remote island with your crypto bag, but you still will be affected by it, since from a multidimensional perspective and the forces acting on and through us, there is no physical distance. All needs to be revealed within and without. All esoteric traditions have prophesied that as well. All needs to be shown. The truth needs to be revealed, right? The darkest secrets of the world and within your own psyche. It's a necessary purging and purification process, a death rebirth process. Depending on how much you have already made conscious within yourself and engaged in the great work, healed your trauma, engaged in shadow work, etc., it will affect everyone differently, but no one can escape what is coming. The light will highlight all shadows in the world and within you. It is the apocalypse, meaning the great unveiling. Many people will rise up and engage in the awakening process consciously, which does require sincere efforts and will. Many others will disintegrate, getting sucked into the abyss of the inconscient as the azuric forces of the underworld take them over, which will also manifest in the merging of man and machine, the dawning of AI and transhumanism, and the medical technocratic tyranny the quote vehicle of the occult hostile forces. It is embodiment or bust, i.e. soul integration, soul individuation, and clearing your vessel in surrender to the divine, your true essence, bringing forth the kingdom and light within you. That is what will carry you and protect you through the waves and tsunamis of changes to rise in your true self. No more excuses, no more hiding, no more blame, no more victimizing, no complaining, no spiritual bypassing, but facing the world, yourself, and reality as it is. True freedom requires that level of self-responsibility. And with that being said, Godspeed and see you in the second hour.